4, 3, 2, 1, let go! Level up, 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 level up.
Welcome to Real Talk TV. My name is Roger Henry, your host, and today we have Nottinghamshire's Crime Commissioner Paddy Tippin as our special guest as part of Black History Month. Welcome, Paddy.
Hiya, Roger. It's good of you to come.
Thank you very much. Nice to have you. Just want to talk a little bit about you as an individual. I know you've got the title of Nottinghamshire's Crime Commissioner, but where did this all begin?
Well, I've been in Nottingham a long time now. Came to university here in 1969, and like many people, I got stuck in Nottingham, and I've enjoyed it. And I've done loads of stuff in Nottingham, originally in social work and working with young people. And then, as you know, I was an MP for getting on for 20 years. Wow. I gave that up for a variety of reasons. And you know how it happens, people come along to you and say, hey, there's this job coming up, Paddy, this Police and Crime Commissioner job. You're not doing nothing at the moment. Why don't you have a go at that? So I've been doing that for 9 years now.
Wow. And is that something you really enjoy doing? I mean, it seems like it's followed on from spending so much of your time being in politics. Was this just a natural progression, do you feel?
Well, it was the best thing I've ever done. So I was an MP, as I say, for 20 years. I was a government minister. I was quite close to Gordon Brown and before that, Tony Blair. But I like this job. It's an exciting job. And why do I like it? Because I can get some stuff done. You know, I can say, I really want to do that. I mean, most of my life in Nottingham has been in what people would call the tougher areas. Mm. So I spent a long time in the Meadows, and then I got posh, and I moved to Sneinton, or right at the top end of Sneinton, yeah, where it becomes Bakersfield. And I'm determined that people get better life chances and live in places that are safe and secure. And I don't think that's a lot to ask, to be quite honest.
No. So can I just take you back before, you know, young Paddy, okay, growing up, what was that like for you?
Well, I grew up in West Yorkshire and kind of had a happy childhood. I got brothers. We moved around a bit. We moved around a bit because there were some financial difficulties and there were bits of problems in the family. But like many people of my generation, I got a scholarship to go to grammar school. And it's often said these days, I was the first person in my family to go to university. Yeah. Mm. And that was a big step. And that's what brought me from Halifax to here. And I guess growing up, as well as kind of studying at school, I was really interested in sport. So I used to play cricket, I used to play rugby. I was a bit wicked. I used to play rugby union in the morning and turn out and play rugby league in the afternoon. In those days, it was illegal to do that. Okay. But I used to get paid 10 bob for turning out for Halifax. And 10 bob in those days, you know, yeah, 10 shilling note. It was a lot of money. Took me out on a Saturday night. Right,
okay. So just talk to me about family dynamics. You know, your mum, your dad. I mean, where's the inspiration come from to drive you to even think in terms of, look, scholarships available, I can go and do this?
I was lucky. I did well at school. I went to a school, grammar school, that got aspirations, that pushed people, wanted to get on, and had some great teachers, built strong relationships with them. Lucky enough to come to Nottingham University, got into a bit of trouble. I came to study law. This was the heady days of the late 60s, kind of the hippie era, or the end of the hippie era. And I changed from law to philosophy. Wow. And when I went home at Christmas, my mum boxed my ears because I want you to have a proper job. And what are you doing philosophy? But as well as being at university, probably wasn't the best attender at university. I used to do a lot of work with young people. There was a youth club, bottom end of St Answell Road, called the Ark. And it was really a youth club for kids at risk, in those days skinheads.
Yeah.
And it was a bit hairy at times.
I'm sure.
So as well as doing that, on a Saturday, I used to work in a school, a supplementary school, working with kids, mainly Pakistani kids, come here, followed the parents here. English was poor, struggling at school. So kind of working with communities like that kind of made me determined to do some stuff. And when I finished university, I was really lucky. Those days in 1972, you could leave university and get a job, proper job, a well-paid job. So I could have gone into probation, but I went into social work and spent most of the 70s working with kids in trouble or kids at risk and their families in the Meadows, in Clifton, and then later on in Forest Fields.
And as I'm listening to you, everything sounds, you know, you're a Yorkshireman, where from my experience of working in Barnsley and Leeds and Wakefield, it was diverse, but it wasn't something I should imagine that you grew up amongst, you know. So when was your first experiences as a young person actually recognising people from different diverse backgrounds?
Well, Halifax, although it now has an Asian community, in those days didn't have. And as I say, I went through quite a school that thought it was posh, let me put it like that. And there were no black or Asian kids in the school. And it was only really when I came to Nottingham that I began to become aware of different cultural mixes. And as I say, working with Asian young kids who were having a tough time at school, struggling to survive, got into some difficulty with the City Council at that time. Story of my life, falling out with the City Council, you know, trying to persuade them to do more for youngsters who've come to this country following the family. So that was quite important. And of course, you know the Meadows, you know Sneinton. They're really mixed communities, really vibrant communities. Street I live on at the moment, top end of Sneinton, bottom end of Bakersfield. Lots and lots of people from different backgrounds there. So it's a great place to live. Walking down the Dale, yeah, I feel, all right, there are problems down the Dale. I know there are problems down the Dale, but it's vibrant. There's lots of things happening down there, lots of activity. And, you know, I remember being really lucky, really lucky.
And, you know, Paddy, you keep using the word lucky. I'd like to think that it's been hard work, because in the time I've known you, as a distinguished person of the city, you always seem to put your head above everybody else. And what I mean by that is you've always supported the BAME community. You know, you've driven and financially funded through commissioning processes lots of different areas for organisations to be able to develop. You know, not everybody does that, and you know, I think for me personally, you need to take that accolade, because you know, Nottingham really needs more people like that, in particular at this time. I would like to know a little bit more about your family dynamics, because word is that you're actually married to a black woman. Is that correct?
I've been with Catherine, who comes from St Kitts originally. Okay. Again, followed her parents here when she was a youngster. So I've been with her for some years. I was kind of married before that to Irene, but like many women, she got cancer, and that was a tough time. Yeah. My mum had also died of cancer before that, so those were quite harrowing experiences. And I've been, again, use the phrase lucky. I've got a daughter who had cancer and has come through it. Fingers crossed. Going to see her this weekend before we get locked down yet again. Yeah, I've had a different family life, and part of the issue for me, or if you were talking to my kids, they'd say to you, well, when you're in Parliament, Dad, you're only a part-time dad. You used to leave on a Monday and come back late on a Thursday night, and I remember on one occasion, Jenny, the oldest one, said to me, "You can't tell me what to do. You're only a part-time dad." And the younger one, Naomi, always used to say to me when she was quite young, 5 or 6, "Oh, you're going away today, Dad? When will you be back this week?" And kind of got on the train with a bit of a lump in my throat, you know. That was quite hard, but I knew where they were there to come back to.
And that is what we call sacrifice. You know, they see Paddy Tippin, the Nottinghamshire Crime Commissioner, the MP, but don't realise, you know, what goes off behind the scenes for you to drive, you know, reform, and at the same time lose that valuable time. Because once you've lost that time with your children, you don't gain it back again.
No, you don't get it back again. But one of the things I've worked really hard on, Roger, is working hard with the grandkids. So I've got 3 granddaughters who just live round the corner from me.
Sorry, did you say 3 granddaughters?
Yeah.
Wow.
3 granddaughters who live round the corner from me. And then I've got 2 grandsons who live up in the northeast. Big Middlesbrough fans, source of controversy, Middlesbrough versus Forest,
yeah.
You know, what's the best team?
Yeah.
Well, it's Forest, of course, and kind of deciding, kind of having missed a lot of time with my own kids, putting time into those youngsters has been really good, and it's been tough.
Yeah.
I mean, these last 6 months, when we were locked down originally, kind of seeing the kids through the window, well, it was really, really hard, you know, and families are important, aren't they? Families are what make us.
Absolutely. And, you know, we're going through a difficult period yet again. You know, the government's talking about another spike, the numbers are increasing. You know, from your point of view, what do you think, you know, what does it look like? How do things work right now?
I think it looks pretty tough, to be quite honest. You know, Prime Minister's just made a statement about where we're at, brought in some new measures. It was going to be all right by Christmas. Now it's all going to be all right by end of March. 6 months during the winter. I think it's going to be pretty tough for all of us. I mean, during the early part of the lockdown, if you remember, the weather was fabulous.
That's right.
And people were able to get out, but being confined during the winter, I think it's going to be tough. I'm not confident that the measures that have already been taken will be sufficient. I think we could see further measures coming. I think we could get to a position where they're in Scotland at the moment, that you can't visit somebody else's house. And that really is difficult for people, isn't it? I mean, it kind of, well, it destroys families. And you know, Christmas is coming up.
Yeah.
Goose is getting fat. Will we be sharing the goose with each other? Maybe not. And that will be really hard for people.
And to throw into the mix of that, then obviously austerity, you know, crime, mental health, all these areas. From a commissioner's point of view, and obviously you work very closely with Craig Guilford, the Chief Constable, what plans have you got or systems that you're sort of considering to be able to help the community?
So during lockdown, both nationally and here in Nottinghamshire, crime went down. But here we are, end of September, coming out of, through the worst, I hope. Crime is coming back to normal levels. Burglary's down. Why? Because people are at home. Shoplifting's down. Why? Because people can't go into shops. I was in Marks and Sparks the other day, on the top floor in the men's department, Sunday afternoon. I was the only customer there.
Wow.
And doesn't that tell you something? Domestic violence is up. Online crime is up. So we've got to respond to those challenges. And of course, one of the challenges for the police is they've been worried about sickness rates themselves. But by and large, you know, coppers, they're big, they're generally young. The sickness rates haven't been too high. So we've got through it. But kind of a lot of pressure on the police to kind of say to people, behave, keep social distance, wear a mask. I think the government have asked the police to do an awful lot.
Yeah. and underfunded as well.
Well, the story of my life has been talking to the government about the underfunding of the police. We're in a big review of police spending at the moment. I spend a good deal of time on this. I lead for this nationally. We've got some extra officers, 20,000 officers. I think the government will commit to that promise, but the rest still up in the air. And even if we get the 20,000 officers, it won't take us back to where we were in 2010, 10 years ago. So it's a tough fight. And sometimes, you know, you don't want to put your boxing gloves on. You've got to be a bit skillful and subtle. So I've just been involved with writing a big report for the Home Office around police funding or police underfunding. Hope it's going to be successful. Spend a lot of time lobbying. Used to go to London quite twice a week. I haven't been to London since the beginning of March. But like everybody else, I'm on the phone a lot. I can master Teams now. Zoom is dead easy, but it's changed the way that we live and relate to each other, hasn't it?
It has, for sure. And while we're talking about the police funding, you know, one of the big issues is having more black police officers. I know Superintendent Sukesh Verma has been very, very strongly involved in that, alongside Ramel Davis. You know, how have the numbers increased and how is that working for you?
Well, Suk and Verma have been absolutely brilliant and have driven things along. I go back a long way with this, Roger. I used to work many years ago for Jack Straw when he was the Home Secretary. And when Jack set up the Macpherson inquiry following the death of Stephen Lawrence, I was involved with that. I kind of felt the pain from the police, the Met Police, when they were called institutional racists, and they were. And that was a really tough message for them, and we had some tough conversations, but we made some progress then. But the really significant thing about this job, when I got it, as I said earlier on, I can do some stuff, I can change some things, and my old friend Cecile Wright, Professor Cecile Wright, and our mutual friend Sajid Mohammed wrote a report for me early doors about what black people thought about the cops, and again, a bit like the Macpherson report, bit of denial, this isn't true, and at that time just 4% of our officers were from a BAME background, and the population of Nottinghamshire, 11% of the community are BAME. So we've really worked hard, and Suk and Rommel and others have carried the burden. Numbers are going up, so we're 7% now, so we've kind of gone up 50%. I think it's our aspiration, it's our real desire, and we're going to do it. I think we'll be the first police force in the country, not this year, not next year, but perhaps the year after, to have a police force that has the right number of people from the black and Asian community working for them, matching the population of the community. And if we can do that, you know, I'll be dead chuffed, as they say in Halifax. You know, it'll be a major achievement, and we've been determined to do it. We've worked hard at it. We're in the middle. You've been involved in it following the death of George Floyd. We're in the talking around Black Lives Matters. It's really given us a push to do more quickly. It's a real window of opportunity.
Absolutely.
And we're going to jump through it.
And just to touch on the George Floyd incident, murder, I'm going to call it as it is, you know, the pain and the discomfort that you talked about, you know, many people throughout the world have gone through that process. In order to create reform, what do you personally think that needs to happen? I know you've set up the Crime Commissioners listening group as a initiative going forward. What is the purpose of that, and what do you hope to achieve from them?
What I want is a police force that represents everybody, that looks like the community we live in, but more particularly respects everybody. And again, one of the big things I've been dead keen on, and again, police force have been really good on this, is stop and search. You'll have been through it.
Yeah.
You've been stopped and searched. It happens all the time. Stop and search has gone from a really low base here in Nottingham. It was the lowest in the country, but with knife crime and violence, the figures have risen. The first force in the country to have a dedicated knife crime team. We've now got 2, and they're stopping and searching the right people. It's intelligence led. If you stop by the knife crime team, 4 out of 10 people are carrying something. That's called a positive outcome rate. Our positive outcome rate here in Nottinghamshire is the highest in the country, double anywhere else. The West Midlands are about 20%. So protecting people, I mean, lots of people from the black communities are concerned about stop and search, but there's some really powerful black women here.
There is.
You got your ear twisted as well as I do. And they say to me, you know, we want our kids to be protected, you know, provided you're doing it with respect, provided you're stopping the right people, we're with you, Paddy. And of course, we've got a stop and search scrutiny group. Most of the accountants now, you know you're in trouble, Roger, if you're talking to an officer, because you can see the camera on the vest,
right.
You can see your reflection on the camera, and that's changed attitudes. It's changed the way that people respond to the police. But of course, the police know they're on camera as well. So we don't have the situation here in Nottingham and Nottinghamshire that you get in the States of white officers shooting down black young men, and we've been able to avoid that. Am I content about it? No, I'm not, because look at the number of people who are handcuffed, for example, and more black young men are handcuffed than white young men. Shouldn't be the case. If you look at the taser figures, causes some concern. I've got people looking at the court system at the moment. If you visit Nottingham Prison, the proportion of black males in there is well above the national average. It really shouldn't happen.
So how do we tackle that? Because police officers, and this is what was said to me the other day, police officers drive through West Bridgford or Ed Walton, those sort of areas, and they see a group of white young people walk in, or they drive into St Anne's. Don't you think it's psychological that they straight away feel that they have to be in a certain persona to be able to respond or engage with these people? What's your thoughts about that?
Well, I think lots of people are threatened by groups of young people, whether they're white or whether they're black. I mean, I was in Ollerton not very long ago, not a big black population there, but kind of people were getting on to me about a group of kids who were hanging around outside an off-licence shop, about 10, 12 kids. And you kind of say to them, well, what's really wrong with that? You know, we feel uncomfortable about it. But let's be clear, young people are our future. We've got to invest in them. Everybody at some time makes mistakes, gets into trouble. And the thing we've got to do is help them through that and help them go forward. You know, because you've been involved in it, we're working quite hard in schools. We have mini cadets in schools. 40% of them are from a black background. Specials, nearly 40% of them are from a black background. So opening the routes for kids at risk to come in and join the police is really important. But it's not just the police, you know, it's into employment. I know you're doing some work with Boots, for example, an organisation that's put its hands up and says we've got to change. We need to do things in schools as well. I mean, I talked earlier on, this is an awful confession. It was get me into trouble 40 years on. But I once schooled, helped a young person who needed to get his GCSE in English, kept failing and failing, and I thought, bugger this, I'll write the essays for himself, and I did. I got 2 degrees. He still failed.
No.
Now, what does that tell you?
Yeah.
What does that tell you?
So before we finish off, and I really appreciate your honesty in going to some of those places, especially your honesty about cheating for the exams. I think that's great.
Well, the cops will come and lock me up.
I think you're past that stage now, Paddy, because
It's spent.
Yeah, that's certainly. And I mean, your career. I mean, the achievement of being, you know, Nottingham being one of the first in the organisation of setting up a specific knife crime team. I mean, that was amazing, because I remember listening to that on the news and it was mentioned at Parliament. Have the rest of the police forces followed since, or is it just Nottingham?
So I'm leading a bit of work nationally, not just police and crime commissioners, but chief constables as well. And as I said earlier on, Roger, I kind of got a lot out of the death of Stephen Lawrence, and I want to get a lot out of the death of George Floyd. And so there's an awful lot of work going on at a national level to say, as my friends would say, seize the opportunity, change the moment, and we're on the case, we're on the move. So there are forces like Greater Manchester, West Midlands that are well on. We're doing well here in Nottinghamshire. What we've got to persuade everybody to do is come up to the standard of the best. Yeah. I'm not saying that we're there yet. I know we're not there yet, but I want to get us over the line. And I really appreciate the support I've had for the communities around this. And it's not always been an easy conversation. I mean, I've had a good deal of kicking over the years, and that's fine. But we've got to press the button. We've got to seize this moment. We've got to ensure that in Nottingham, in Sneinton, in the Meadows, across the city, that we can make a difference. We can take the challenges and we can make a change. And that's what it's all about. And
that's, you know, to summarise, it sounds like you've got a two-pronged attack, because you're doing, obviously, the work with the police and those authorities, but also the Commissioners Listening Group, which I know you've just, you know, newly started, involving the community to be able to collate the information. So at the end of that process, what would come of that information that you receive from the communities regarding
I think you've got to turn outwards and listen. I think lots of institutions in our society, including the police, including the education system, that thinks they're it, that they know it all. But actually, we don't know it all, and we need to talk to people about their life experience, what's happened to them, and getting groups of people together to talk with us, not just with me, but with a wider audience, I think is really important. We've always done it, but we're refreshing it with the Community Listening Group. I'm really pleased that we've got some really younger people on it. In the past, it's been easy to go and talk to the imams or the kind of pastors of the black churches, and that's important. But the thing that strikes me about the Black Lives Movement is the number of young people involved, and it's given us real energy, it's given us a real opportunity, a real spur to change, and I'm not going to miss it.
And I think with you mentioning, you know, young people being involved in this, what's really interesting to see is the percentage of white young people, you know, and as you say, it is the right time. So I'm going to ask you another question, and I've asked all the guests this, especially in particular white guests. How often do you think about being white?
I think about being white most of the time.
Okay.
And I kind of, every day, kind of count my blessings. We use the phrase lucky. I've been honoured. I've done some really good and interesting things, but I spend a lot of time talking to people from different communities who've not had the opportunities.
The privilege, you would say.
Sorry?
Would you say the privilege?
The privilege I've had, yeah. I went to a posh school, thought it was a posh school. I went to Nottingham University, Russell University. I went back to the university. I got into Parliament. I've had tremendous privileges. I've been absolutely, I've had a good life. And I want everybody to have a good life or a better life. And just kind of knowing you can change things, knowing that people can change. I mean, I know loads of people who've been in trouble, very entrepreneurial. They've used the skills that they've got in trouble to go on and do other things. And I just think investing in people is investing in the future, and a good future is a good future for all of us, whatever our race, religion or background.
And that kind of summarises what Real Talk TV is about. You know, there may be a problem. You've talked about your past, the loss in your life, but the solution is that we can still keep, you know, a day at a time, improving ourselves. So what is it? Let's take away the title of the Nottinghamshire Crime Commissioner just for a split second. What does Paddy do for fun? What's your fun? Well, if you were talking to my kids, they'd say, Dad, if you've not been out walking, you get really wrapped up and wound up. So I'm a really big walker. Kind of Halifax is a nice town, but the best bits about Halifax are the routes out of it, right, onto the moors. So I spent a lot of my teenage years walking the moors, going into the Yorkshire Dales. I walk a lot in the Peak District now. We've been locked down most of this year. I've done a lot of walking in Nottingham, and just walking out, looking at the countryside, appreciating what we've got is really important to me. And the other thing that's important to me is whilst I've been locked down, I've been able to do some blooming good stuff in my garden. Oh, wow. My garden would win the Chelsea Flower Show. I mean, it's gone from a bonsai to something that I'm quite pleased about. And it's a skill I haven't got, a skill I've learnt. So being outdoors, breathing the fresh air, feeling the wind on the face, like it when it's sunny too, but I don't mind walking in the rain, is what I like to do best of all. Well, thank you so much, Paddy, for joining us on Real Talk TV. Grateful to have you on the show as part of Black History Month. And I'd like to say thank you so much for giving us the time and inviting us into your life. So with that, we'll come to an end. Thank you for watching.
Level up, level up, level up, level up, level up.
Have you ever stopped and think? My colour can't be changed by ink, nor by what I drink, or by what people think. I'm the one you're bonding. I'm the missing link. Have you ever stopped and wonder what we call each other? Bro, brethren, brother. That mutual respect we share amongst each other. Seeing every elderly male as a father and each female as a mother or sister. Have you ever stopped to appreciate the voluptuous curves of a black woman? Skin cool, dark and tan, enhanced by cocoa butter lotion, handcraft and scent straight from the motherland. Have you ever thought about reading Black history, her story, my story, your story, our story, the story of our ancestors, the blood, sweat and tears of our forefathers, the genetical connection of our brothers and sisters, shackles on the feet, chain on their fingers, those haunting cries, never-ending whispers, licked, whipped, lashed and blisters. We now know half the story has never been told, but we do know we're taken from the sun and brought to the cold, bought and sold for silver and gold, shape-shifted, branded and mold, losing our dignity, pride and identity, lost our quality and sold in quantity. Who we are today, we should be proud. Let's raise our voice and make it loud.